Hey, so we're back. Feeling a little better today, and I just wanted to break out a little bit more information on the grid technology. So one of the more interesting things about the way the grid came to be is was largely in the way that it kind of transpired through me over time. I think it's interesting how we learn different things at different times in different ways, and the good experiences and the bad experiences, and they all kind of set this foundation for things. So much like this grid situation, where I'm rolling this out now, making this available to people. That isn't an overnight thing. I mean, that's the result of a lifelong process, learning from the honors English elements, the deep understanding of metaphors, and understanding the meaning in things, and being able to see that, and being able to see the meaning in life, and then some deviations into dealing with energy work and circle work, and there was some spell work for a while, and which you can learn the hard way from that, which I did, on how things need to be phrased or worded and very carefully thought out. And I kind of moved away from that and realized that it's much safer to be working in the flow. And you can still get your intentions put out there, but when you're in connection and in a flow with everything else, then it's more collaborative. So it's interesting just how the crit all came to be. And also I had been following those patterns and learned to see those patterns in my life, the repetition and the sequences. Sometimes a lot of people see sequences of numbers, and for me it's sequences of numbers, different recurring themes, sometimes recurring people, and or signs. It can be even real signs that you see on the road. But bottom line is, I had followed that, and I learned how to follow that pattern. I don't know, maybe back in 2003 is where I started to really put it together. And then how the universe speaks and how it all flows started to make more sense. And the more you can see that synchronicity, and the more you can understand the messages in that, I think the easier everything gets. So it's kind of fantastic as you start to open those doors. And then for me, I had run into a gentleman who was working with Ormus at actually 0 Point, and I think he had met David Hudson, and he was residing in Mexico, I believe. But he had lived here, worked for the government for a while, and he was working with Ormus, which I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but it is like a 0 Point type of material, monatomic, and a lot of people I think are referring to it as monatomics now, and it can be derived from anything almost, but a lot from plants, and it's actually in our bodies, these substances, and found a lot, I think, around the ancient sites, especially in the pyramids and the healing waters, also salts, sea salts, and metals, which I believe it has to be condensed down now. I find it fascinating that I'm always driven to understand science and math, and yet I have no gift in those areas. And I feel like had I been given, having access to this person that was great in this chemistry and was working with us 0 Point energy, and working with it through, I think, water machines and vortex technology, but I had access to, here's this chemist, amazing person, science-based, and if I'd had financial, a larger financial base than I do, and if I'd had science and chemistry and math strength in any of those areas, I would have most definitely gone a different route and would not have been where I am now, and I would not have tried to solve for X, so to speak, using a spiritual means to do so. And because I had done work with sacred circle work, it's kind of like sacred, like setting up a sacred space and kind of working within that. Because I had done that type of work, and because I didn't have a knack for the science and math and chemistry, even though those doors were there, I could not walk through them, and so I was literally funneled through by my higher self, or by a source, or whatever you want to call it, but basically kind of corralled into going a different way to solve for the 0-point equation. So this is it's a different way of doing it, but it does seem to fall into alignment nicely with some of the Dan Winner's explanations, which again, he has the Light Your Fire videos. He's incredible. I can understand maybe a quarter of what he's saying, but enough to know that this is, in alignment, and I'm very happy about that, and I'm glad that we solved this, in a different way. So, that being said, the grid is really, it's kind of sitting in this zone, and we can get there too, being within that energy, but we still have to clean the cup, so to speak. We have to remove the impurities within us to be able to bring that energy in and to achieve that state. It just makes that state nice and available for us, which is quite awesome. And so you can have a person that's really grumpy, and be in the grid, but what they're not going to be having is a lot of outside interferences that are contributing to that. So now really it's just them against themselves, and those are fair odds. Those are the kinds of odds that I was praying for years. It's like, I don't see how this is unfair. We need something to make this fair. We should be accountable for ourselves. We should have the ability to make these decisions, not have these things programmed upon us. And basically we've lost some of our sovereignty. Granted, collectively, socially, we've kind of given it away, but at the individual level, there are people that don't consent, and yet they're still being affected by this stuff. So this really evens the playing field, and it does it in a way where a lot of scientists have been trying to chase down this 0-point energy field, and they've been doing it through technology, they've been doing it through science, but 0-point is really spiritual, and it's really about going back into that point. And I really am going to just defer to Dan Winters for the scientific explanation of all that, because it's just not my thing. But I can tell you what I want to describe is the amazingness of working with this energy. I think it's kind of interesting. I will say that I feel like I've gotten more gray hairs working, and I can't tell if it's because of the life stuff or that I was going through before that, or if it's related, but I do think it's interesting. There is a definite electrical sensation that comes with working with this energy, and it feels really neat. And the one thing that I will say is it does definitely affect the Kundalini energies and the flow within the spine. So one of the first things we notice when we turn the grid on, first of all, it's affected by salt lamp. So if you're going to have a salt lamp in your grid region, just be aware it's going to amplify and magnify the grid. If you are in an actual physical grid, it'll make it so much worse. By worse, I mean better, but worse, because it's going to amplify the effects. So if you're looking for the fast track, leave your salt lamp on. But anyway, so when you are sitting there, the first thing we noticed was there was some agitation emotionally, and it was like stuff kind of bubbling to the surface, and it's kind of shaking that stuff free and making it more bringing up your awareness of it. And so you get to kind of make that observable so that it's more easily able to be dissolved. Because once you're aware of a situation, or once you're aware of a scenario that's running, or a program that's running for you, it seems to be a lot easier that you can just kind of make a note of it and get to it when you can, or make a note of it and see if you can't use compassion and dissolve it right then and there. So, I think Till Swan does some great work on this as far as explaining like how to dissolve an emotion. Fantastic stuff. There's a lot of people that work on how to clear your emotions. But when you're in the grid, if you're experiencing them and, the time is not right to be working, then just make a note, write it down, make a mental note, do a recorder, video recorder, phone recorder, whatever. But make a note so that you can get back to that issue. The other thing you'll notice when you're working in there initially, and I say initially because it really does even out. You might feel weird sensations through your body, so energy is going to start trying to shift and move and clear. And the grid is really set up to also help you kind of clear through your chakras and clear out the emotional blockages. It's going to try and do some of that work for you, but you still have to participate in that process. So, where some of us, that were already had been doing a lot of work and had experienced, some kind of funky pain, so it'd like jump around. So maybe it'd be elbow for a few minutes, and then move to the shoulder, and then it might go into the back, and then the lower back, and then it might be there in the lower back for a couple days, and then it might shift out. So that energy, and I would just encourage you, exercise, be embodied, do your yoga, stretch, walk, just anything you can do to help that energy shift and move through your system. So that's one of the first things that we noticed with the grid when we set it up, because there was a lot of intention set to help the body, help the person to achieve 0 point at the pace that's right for them. So that whole component is something that needs to be noted, and I want people to be aware of it. So we'd set that up. They may have some phantom pain stuff come up, and it's going to be trying to clear that stuff out. So the more you could be involved in clearing that out, the better. So jump on board and just have some compassion. There's some great ways of doing that. You can present yourself kind of as a small child and just say, I'm sorry that you're feeling this pain. You can also just hold the emotion out away from you and allow yourself to be present with that, and just show compassion for that emotion so that it dissolves. You can also go to the physical location of the pain and focus, and just say, I'm here with you now. Understand how you're feeling. I have compassion for this pain, and just be with it. And don't judge it. Don't resist it. You're not embracing it. You're just allowing it to be there, and acknowledging and observing it, and allowing it to dissolve in that way. So that will help these little phantom pains kind of move through faster. I just want to make sure that people know that this is a very normal part of this process. Let's see, some of the other stuff. There was some transitionary stuff. So when the grid, because it's going to be, everything is expansion, right? Everything is expanding all the time, whether it's our knowledge and our universe and us and our consciousness and our, our lives, and it's always expanding and growing. So basically what you have is, in that expanding model, this grid also follows that form. So when you've kind of made a lot of headway, it will kind of bring you up to the next level. So when that shift occurs, you may feel maybe a little stressed, a little anxious, Usually it's just taking you to that, level where you're stretched again. You're being kind of expanded out. So you're going to be just a little bit of discomfort, but it shouldn't be too much. And if at any point something feels like it's too much, it's probably something that's emanating from inside you. So your best bet is just to turn off the grid. If you're still feeling like that, it's probably you. Just give yourself some time, or just take a little break and come back to it. This is not a rush. And the beauty is all the work that everyone else is doing is going to be helping you along as well. So just want people to be aware of some of the experiences that we've had with the grid. There's been the extent of a healing crisis, and I have to say, one of the people that I know has, a pretty horrific laundry list of medical conditions. And when we first went going with this grid, we kind of went all out, and we're like, bring on the healing, bring on everything. And she was like basically bedridden for a week. So we decided to taper that back and make it so it would be a much more palatable transition, that the healing needs to come in a way that's manageable, and that it's not going to put anybody on their back or make them unfunctional. And I want to say that that same thing has been applied for any spiritual growth. People still need to be, and this is kind of the concept of the way of the frog, is that we want to be on that lily pad where we're between the world. We're in the world, but we're not of it. We are right between spirituality and the physical world, and able to function quite perfectly. So in that, in that state, in that bliss state, and we're right there in that perfect 0 point state. That's the goal. So what we're looking for then is in the expansion process, it's programmed that, the person can set their own level of desire. The individual can set their own level of desire for what they want, as far as how they, if they want to go all out down the spiritual path, they can go down a road that could potentially, if that's what they're looking for, not blend into society very well, So when this was set up, it was set up so that the individuals would be able to integrate everything that they're expanding out and learning. So if they're learning new spiritual techniques, learning how to see auras, or developing new gifts, new abilities, if that's on their agenda, if they've made that intention clear, and that's something that I feel the conscious self, the awake self, needs to be very intent. That intent needs to be placed, I believe. So maybe the higher self can override, but I feel like it would be just wise for the conscious people to say what it is that they would like there. But anyway, all of the programming that's set is developed and designed so that if you are aspiring to bring in new gifts, new abilities, and have these new things in your life, then you've set that intention. But those things are programmed to be integrated into your existence in a way that's not harmful to you, so that you can learn to integrate those in a way and assimilate that into your life, so that you will never be in a situation where you're in jeopardy of having to choose. You're basically caught between the spiritual and the physical realm, and maybe you end up in a mental ward. That's that programming is designed to try to prevent that, because we want people to be able to integrate this stuff into their life in a way that's healthy, maybe in a way that complements what they're already doing, or expands them into a new area of where they want to be, or where they want to go, all of which is in alignment with their higher self. So once again, there's a lot of protections, there's a lot of programs put in. This stuff is there to make sure that people are able to exist in the grid, protected from them to be causing themselves harm. We want the playing field to be fair and the rules to be fair, and that nothing's going to be in place unless their individual sovereign higher self or their conscious self is okay with it. So basically, all these things are in place so that we can really maximize the benefits and really reduce any potential, if not eliminate any potential for problems. There's a lot of programming that prohibits any external effects. From a person that gets the grid, they can set their own grid intentions for their own benefit, working within that grid. The healing properties of that would then be shared, but only if they're accepted by others on their higher self level. But so the individual can set their own intentions, and I would say definitely go for it within the grid. But if they want to actually have it programmed into the actual primary grid, they would need to let me know, and I would need to look at it and really consider it, for how that would, serve all. So that's, there's no backwards programming. That's not going to happen. There is a shared healing element, but there's no there's no backwards programming. You can't have somebody that has bad intent get a hold of the crystal and then program in a bunch of stuff that could harm people. That can't be done. Not with this tech. So that's the other thing. Then I do want to talk about the electricity component, because there's definitely an electricity component. I was jokingly saying that I have more gray hair now from working with this, but I feel energized. I've had this cold. This was a self-induced cold. I had a moment of despair, and it's I should have known better, because the grid program is that the bad stuff that's going to happen is going to be now at this point. It's not going to be something that you brought on yourself. It's going to be something that's either going to raise your intention, raise your vibration, or bring you to a new level, or bring you to a new place, or basically the stuff that's happening that's crummy. It's all very important at this point, and it's all been filtered so that the only stuff that's going to be happening to you at this point is going to be the stuff that is going to propel you forward. So those negative sequences aren't going to be caused by you, I guess I should say, or by external forces that are ill-willed against you. So that experience, of course, as silly as it was a good reminder that I just need to not dip down into that territory of worry and fear. It's not productive, and it was a great reminder for me, and that's where I'm at with that now. But most of the time, I feel amazing, and I feel extremely balanced. It's interesting because I had gotten out of a narcissistic relationship, and it was only a year ago. It takes most people, I've seen a lot of people that still haven't recovered, but typically it could be anywhere from 5-10 years for people to ever try and get some normalcy back. And I was still having that same struggle until I set this grid up. I'd done a ton of work, I'd done a ton of clearing related to the issue, but once I set that up, it's almost like whatever was going on there, whatever that energy siphoning that was happening just went away, and my anger went with it. And so I was able to just be in this place where I felt fine, if anything, kind of compassionate towards this individual that basically lives in a dark place, and can't produce their own energy. They have to siphon it off of others. So once I became protected kind of by this grid, it all balanced out for me, and I really didn't, I can still kind of be annoyed by certain things they do, but it's not anywhere at the level that it was. Everything is very balanced, and I'm able to navigate through having to still have this person around all the time, but I'm able to navigate through it quite healthily now, and I have a different sense about it. So there has definitely been experiences with almost like a vampiric type personalities that are around you before and after, before the grid and after the grid, and definitely helps. Have more resiliency towards the people that are really just always negative. Granted, I mean, it's still not fun to hear them banter on, but you just kind of stay in a place where judgment's kind of reduced. It's interesting. It's really what's triggering at that point is the stuff that's triggering that you need to work on that's within you, and it's not their emotional profile that's coming through. It's not them being worked up that's getting you wired up. It's something that they're saying that may be triggering something that you need to work on in you. So it's wonderful to have these filters applied and to have some control over what's coming in and what's going out, and to be far less impacted by all of these things that are happening around us, and just allowing us to be accountable for ourselves. But the electricity that's within this grid, I do find it's quite fascinating. When I work with this energy, it does feel like electricity. It feels like a different form of it. And it was quite by accident that I ended up channeling this energy. I was in the grid. I was trying to do Reiki, and I tried to pull the Reiki energy through, and I didn't really word it as the Reiki energy. Instead, I said, I'm bringing through this energy. Well, I was sitting in the middle of this grid, and it very, very quickly became aware to me that I could pull in this energy, being the grid energy, and realize that, wow, this is a different form of energy. Kind of awesome. And so, upon realizing that, I, of course, started having all kinds of fun playing with this, and channeled it through into water. Realized that the water was, I mentioned earlier about the gentleman who did the Ormus and who was the chemist down from Mexico. And I had bought one of his vortex water machines that works with Ormus and generating Ormus through the water. Anyway, the water that is channeled through is very much like that. It ends up very much, it depends on obviously how much you're focusing and how long you do it for. It becomes very thick, becomes very oily. It's great tasting. It alkalizes the water, and it's just amazing to be able to channel this. I mean, and then you can channel it through for your food, for your water. You can send it back into your own system in different locations. It really energizes your system. But I'm not completely certain that it is a healing modality. I think it's fun and it's electrical, but I think that the 0 point stuff is really about balancing. So if anything, perhaps has a grounding effect. And I'm still exploring that. I'm definitely open to information of people that are working with that. But as far as the actual attunements go, the design for the attunement is really about bringing in those intentions and setting it the 0 point where you are safe and secure. People that are tuned for that, it's not going to affect other attunements. They just need to be very specific when they're using those attunements. And if you're bringing through Reiki energy, you want to say, I'm bringing through this Reiki energy, and that way, it's very clear what you're trying to work with. But the 0 point type energy from this grid energy, amazing for water. Highly recommended. I love drinking that water. It makes me feel amazing. It really gets the Kundalini energy going. I think really this is all about moving the Kundalini energy through the spine and electrical. It will raise it up very quickly, so you'll actually have Kundalini rising effects. And it's really important not to resist those. Just allow them, and allow them to kind of focus, and try not to resist it, because it will actually be more painful if you resist it. So if you're having those types of experiences, your best bet is lay down and just allow that to just kind of gently move upwards, and maybe do some research and just figure out, from various people if they can help you work through those types of experiences. But if you don't want those experiences, simply just let the grid know that you don't want to have those experiences. Now, keep in mind that I do want to be really specific when I say this. It's really important to understand that if you're doing drugs or eating unhealthy food, those will resonate in the different at the different points in your energy. So when you're working with this grid, I noticed this really for the attuned people. I haven't had anybody that's not running an attunement have this issue. So bottom line is, when you're working with this energy, if you're running the attunement, you're bringing that much energy in, where you're actually flowing the energy through your body, you're going to have a lot more effects as far as the Kundalini energy. You're going to have a lot more movement. Every time you channel that energy, it's going to produce some Kundalini type effects in your throughout your electrical body. And it's just kind of interesting that, yeah, if you smoke, or if you eat unhealthy foods, or if you're eating candy, I noticed it with candy, coffee, smoking, those types of things will affect the attunement, to the extent that it's not going to change the attunement. It's just going to it's going to trigger the different parts of those blockages. So for some it might be willpower, and you may feel a blockage in your back or chest. If it's sugar, you may feel some blockage in the I've noticed that in the pineal gland will kind of shut down for a little bit until you really bring that energy back through. But yeah, you will feel random blocks throughout what I would call basically the chakra body. You'll feel different energy build-ups that'll become much more noticeable after the attunement. But you will feel those energy build-ups when you're doing something that's not healthy for you, which I thought was kind of awesome, because most of the time when we do these things, and maybe we're not that tuned in, and so I don't really realize exactly where is this, what is this thing that I'm doing, what part of my energy body is this affecting. And we all go back to the landmark websites, or the places that, here's what the smoking centers, the sacral chakra. Okay, that's great, wonderful, but it's different when you feel it. It's because when I first started this whole thing, I was still doing still had my e-cigarettes, and I was randomly once in a while use. Well, that's no more, because that would create such a huge amount of pain in my sacral chakra, not pain but discomfort, and it was not fun. So basically, until I got rid of that stopped being an issue, and then the energy flows a lot more easily. But like I said, certain foods will trigger that. So you can work with the energy, explore. I had one really crazy out-of-body experience, and I just spent a lot of time just laying there feeling this energy and bringing it up and down through my body. At one point I was able to get all the hairs on my arms to stand up from by putting the tongue by bringing that energy through, and then locking my tongue at the top of my mouth, like they do with Reiki, when they kind of try to keep energy out or in, depending on what you're doing. So kind of fascinating how we get to play with all this stuff and experiment, explore. It's really fun. I've really enjoyed working with this, but I think it's really important to understand that it's still slightly experimental. I'm really excited to see what people can come up with. The part that I'm comfortable with really is this shared grid model. The energy is not harmful. The intentions of the grid is not harmful. It's all very coming from a place of balance and peace and love and connection. And really, this is it's kind of an unprecedented. It feels unprecedented to me. I've been all over the place. I've read a lot of things. I haven't seen anybody do this before, but I really set out on a mission to see if there was a way to unite all these fronts. I wanted something easy. I wanted something that made sense, and wanted a way to tie these the healing modalities together. Wanted a way to propel humanity forward in a united front. So that's this is one of the simplest ways to do it. And I love the model. I think the model is exciting, as far as being able to get all these things out to people, get them all programmed. That might take a little while. There may be some delays in getting all these out to everybody, since at the moment it's just me doing it, so, and a couple people. So basically where we're at now is just disseminating this information out, allowing people to understand what we do know. Hopefully people will share their experiences with this, and just know that there are a slew of things to ensure that it is safe, and the intentions are great for this, and we're excited about it, and seen progress already on many fronts for the people that have been working with it or experiencing it. I do think that the attunement process definitely seems to have the most results, but I will be honest, it's one of those things where it's going to be more expensive, and it's really only because of the fact that I have to take my actual time, and I work full time, so I have to spend time with the individuals to get them programmed, and so that's why it's going to be a little bit more expensive to do that, but it's worth it because you'll be running the program constantly. It's just on. The grid is just always around you, and it's doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to have your jewelry on. You're not reliant on a thing. It's just programmed straight to your pineal gland, programmed to those crystals in there, and it's really designed to make it so you're a force to be reckoned with at that point. And it's beautiful because you can channel the water through, without the program for the attunement, channeling the water through, I don't think is going to be, I haven't had anyone test that yet. I guess I'll need to have someone that's wearing a crystal or maybe within the grid attempt to focus on having that energy channeled. They probably can, but I think that that attunement process is most definitely, I've been working with that specifically, and I know for sure it works, and I know I've tested it, done some alkaline tests with it as well, and it's quite outstanding, so I'm pretty excited about that. But attunement process, like I said, it does require my time, and that's why it's a little more expensive, because it's going to be probably an hour or two, and also I need to do some training so that people understand how to use the energy, how to work with that energy, what to expect. I'm going to have some electrical impulses at the top of the head, and anytime that you're working with that energy or channeling that energy through, the one thing that will eventually, as you work with it a little more, what you're going to run into is you will literally feel electrical impulses right where the psychic eye is. That's one of the things for sure that in doing this work, whenever I do the grid water, called grid water, whenever I do the grid water, I will have that tingling sensation, and if I'm really in the zone, I will feel it's like fire all across the top of my head. So it's quite beautiful. It's like the crown and the psychic eye both are engaged in that process, but also your center spot as well. So it's all very exciting, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody.